it feels far more risky these days than I certainly can remember as a pastor. I know I am so ultra careful with my language because I always feel stressed, like I have to filter it through about how 30 different people are going to hear it. Does that sound familiar to you? Yeah. It's something no doubt you're doing all the time too. It is no fun being that hypervigilant. Matter of fact, I would dare say it's exhausting, and it's not a good adventure. It just isn't. And when do we finally say, enough, this is not working? We have to find a third way. We have to cross over from fear to vision. Moving out of those places where the anger is, where the disagreement is, moving to those places where we share a common vision. I love the concept, right? This beautiful New Church concept I was reading about where Emanuel Swedenborg said so much of it is with your relationship with God is like literally seeing God eye to eye. That's the relationship God wants, like literally eye contact. And we think about eye to eye, that eye to eye works this way, right? Like two people looking at each other, eye contact. But it also works this way, where we put our heads together, literally. And we're eye to eye now. And we're eye to eye looking out on a vision that pulls us out of our fears. That's the world I think God intends. And it is interesting to see it. And I don't know whether this is your experience. This is mine. Is it feels like this anger shows up here, here, and here. And it's the same anger. It's just different words showing up. Doesn't that give us a different view of divine providence? You know, that idea that God is always bending really hard things towards what's good? And that may not change the circumstances per se, but it changes us. And it can't just be, folks, where we like say these things because they're beautiful. It's about how do we actually live them? How do you take what you wrote, understand that's part of God's vision working through you? How do you actually live into that story? Courageously. I think that's so much the gift of the wilderness. If our lives are surrounded by a bunch of things, by a bunch of noises, by a bunch of flashy, shiny things, we'll miss it. And yet, when we find our lives in quieter spaces that maybe even feel a little dark and intimidating, and we can still, I think we'll find it there. And it's understanding this beautiful view of God, that God is on our side. And the world is not, as this quote says, and the world is not a blind flat clash of conflicting powers, but held by a single, creative, loving will. Think about that. I mean, that's sort of the miracle of our Judeo-Christian heritage was that idea of monotheism. It's not like you have this God over here battling that God over here, battling that God over here, battling that God over here. No, it's the idea that there's one God who's holding the whole thing with a single, creative, loving will, whose whole point, whose whole vision is a heaven from the human race. Do we sometimes work against that current? Absolutely. And the invitation remains to step back into it and to allow vision to carry us forward.